I was away on a business trip, FaceTiming my husband every night, same routine, same smile. But one night, as he walked away from the screen, I spotted something on my side of the bed, a pink phone. Not mine. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, ended the call, and booked the next flight home. I didn't tell him. I used a spare key, walked in, music upstairs, laughter. I started recording before I even touched the stairs. And when I opened the bedroom door. My name is Quinn Harper and I'm 34 years old. For 3 years, my marriage to Derek Harper, my husband, has been a series of predictable comforts, a life built on a foundation of shared routines and inside jokes that felt as solid as bedrock. The most important of these rituals were our nightly video calls whenever my job as a partnerships manager sent me on the road. They were our anchor, a small, pixelated window that made 1,000 miles feel like nothing more than the space between two pillows. Tonight, I'm in a beige hotel room in Denver, the kind of aggressively neutral space designed to be forgotten the moment you check out. The art is a blurry photograph of a forest, the carpet is a swirl of brown and tan, and the air smells faintly of industrial cleaner. But on my screen, there's home. Derek is in our bed, propped up against the plush gray headboard, the pristine white duvet I insist on pulled around his waist. He smiles, and the familiar warmth of it travels through the screen. He tells me about his day. A client loved his latest design. Our dog did something funny with a squeaky toy. It's all so normal, so perfectly, reassuringly mundane. I miss you, I say, tracing the rim of my water glass on the cheap wooden desk. The words are automatic, true in the way the sun rises. I miss you more, he replies, his voice a low hum. The bed feels way too big without you. He shifts, tells me he's going to grab a glass of water from the kitchen, and stands up. He leaves his phone on the nightstand, angled down toward the mattress. The camera tilts, the frame jiggles and then settles. My heart doesn't drop, it doesn't flutter or ache, it just stops. There on my side of the bed, resting on my pillow, is a phone. It's not his sleek black one. It's not my simple silver one. It's cased in glittery bubblegum pink. The color is impossibly loud in our carefully curated world of soft grays and calming neutrals. It's a garish splash of neon in a watercolor painting. It's a detail so wrong, so profoundly out of place that it feels like a scream ripping through the quiet fabric of my life. I stare at it, a cheap, sparkling thing lying where my head is supposed to be, and the beige walls of my hotel room feel like they're closing in. Derek comes back into the frame a moment later, holding a glass. He's completely oblivious, still talking about some email he has to send in the morning. He picks up his phone and his face fills the screen again, smiling and handsome. The pink phone is gone from my view, but it's seared into my mind, a pulsing, glittering afterimage. I force my face to remain neutral, to conjure the slightly tired expression of a wife who has been in meetings all day. I have to hold this together. The performance of my life depends on it. How are your parents? I ask, the question a smooth, worn stone in my mouth. It's a safe topic, a detour away from the landmine that just detonated in my chest. The lie slides out so easily it scares me. Inside, a switch flips. It's not a dramatic, wrenching sound, it's a quiet, definitive click. The warmth I felt just minutes ago doesn't curdle into rage, it sublimates into ice. The love, the trust, the future we were building piece by careful piece, it all evaporates in the space of a single, silent heartbeat. I see the pink phone again in my mind's eye, a beacon of betrayal signaling that the life I thought I had was a carefully constructed fiction. Every shared laugh, every promise whispered in the dark, every "I miss you," it's all been called into question by a cheap piece of plastic and glitter. I tell him my laptop is about to die and I need to plug it in. Another lie just as smooth as the first. I should probably get some sleep anyway, big day tomorrow. Okay, hun, he says, his voice full of a sincerity that now feels like a physical blow. I love you too, Quinn. Sleep well, I love you, I say back. The words feel like ash, a foreign language I no longer understand. The call ends and his face vanishes, replaced by my own reflection on the dark screen. The smile I was holding drops away, leaving behind a blank, hollow mask. The hotel room is utterly silent, the manufactured quiet pressing in on me. On the desk next to my laptop sits my favorite cobalt blue mug, a gift from him on our first anniversary. He'd said the color was calm, just like me. I stare at it, this object I once cherished, and a wave of revulsion washes over me. I suddenly, violently hate it. I don't cry. I don't scream or throw the offending mug against the wall. That kind of emotional release feels like a luxury I can no longer afford. Instead, I open my laptop, the quiet clicks of the keys the only sound in the room. My goal is no longer to get through this conference, to smile through presentations and shake hands at networking events. My new goal, my only goal, is to get proof. The primary obstacle is the 1,000 miles of dark American landscape that stretches between Denver and my home. It's a chasm that needs to be crossed, and quickly. I navigate to an airline website, my fingers moving with a mechanical precision that feels disconnected from my body. I book the first flight out, 5:45 a.m. one way. There's no need to book a return. I won't be coming back to this life. Once the confirmation email appears, I pick up my phone and send a text to Derek. Conference extended, more meetings tomorrow. Will call you when I can, exhausted. The lie is the key. It's a shield and a weapon. It buys me the time I need. It ensures he won't expect me, that he'll feel safe and secure in the little world he's built on top of our marriage. I begin to pack my suitcase. Every movement is deliberate, stripped of emotion. I fold my blouses, roll my pants, and place my toiletries in their designated pouch. My mind is a checklist, a cold, logical sequence of steps. Get home, use the spare key I keep hidden under the loose porch stone, be silent, record everything. Confrontation isn't the plan. A messy, screaming fight would give him the chance to lie, to twist things, to paint me as the hysterical wife. I'm not interested in his excuses. I'm interested in annihilation. I finish packing and stand by the dark hotel window, looking at my reflection superimposed over the distant city lights. I don't recognize the woman staring back at me. Her jaw is set, her eyes are cold, and her stillness is absolute. She's not the trusting wife who left for a business trip 3 days ago. She's someone else entirely. She's a strategist, a soldier, and she's ready for war. The flight is a blur of humming engines and recycled air. I don't sleep. I don't read or listen to music. I just stare out the small, oval window at the dark sky slowly bleeding into the bruised purple of dawn. The world below is a patchwork of tiny, sleeping lights. I feel completely disconnected from it, as if I'm an astronaut observing a foreign planet. I land as the sun is just beginning to rise, casting long, cool shadows across the tarmac. The air is crisp and clean, a stark contrast to the stale atmosphere of the plane. It feels like the start of a new, terrible day. I summon a rideshare, and when the driver asks for the address, I give him one 2 blocks away from my house. No witnesses, no friendly driver to remember dropping off a wife who wasn't supposed to be home. I get out of the car and walk down the familiar street. The lawns are still wet with dew, and the houses are quiet, their windows dark. Our street looks so peaceful, a perfect suburban lie. Then I see it. Parked right in front of our house under the big oak tree is a ridiculously oversized SUV. It belongs to Tara Blake, my neighbor. The one who teaches fitness classes down the block, the one who brings us a plate of cookies every Christmas and asks about my work trips with a wide, friendly smile. The sight of her car doesn't bring a fresh wave of pain. It brings confirmation, a fresh wave of ice solidifying in my veins. It's not a stranger, it's not some anonymous mistake. It's someone who has looked me in the eye, who has stood in my kitchen and complimented my choice of countertops. The betrayal is intimate. I reach the front porch and my hand goes to the loose stone near the azalea bush. My fingers close around the cold metal of the spare key. My hand doesn't shake. The lock clicks open with a soft, oiled sound. I slip inside, closing the heavy oak door behind me without a sound. The house is still but not silent. I can hear soft music, a faint, rhythmic beat coming from upstairs from our bedroom. I slip off my shoes, leaving them neatly by the door. I move up the stairs one step at a time, my feet silent on the thick runner. My heart isn't racing, it's a cold, steady drum beating out a rhythm of purpose. The music is louder now, it's some slow, generic pop song I don't recognize. Beneath the music I can hear laughter. A woman's laughter, her laughter, it's light and carefree, and it's a desecration in this house. I pull my phone from my pocket. My thumb hovers over the video camera icon, then over the red record button. This is the moment. Everything that comes next will be determined by what I do in the next 30 seconds. I take a deep, silent breath, filling my lungs with the still air of my home. My finger presses down and the small red light begins to blink. I am recording just before my hand closes around the cool, brass doorknob. I push the door open. The scene is exactly what I expected, yet it's still a visceral shock. There they are, Derek and Tara, tangled in our white sheets, the same sheets I had washed and folded before I left. They freeze, their bodies caught in a still life of betrayal. Their faces are a rapid collage of emotions, first shock, then a dawning panic, and finally a deep, sickening shame. Derek scrambles for the sheet, pulling it up to cover himself, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Quinn," he finally gasps, his voice a choked whisper. "What are you doing here?" You're supposed to be in Denver." Tara just stares, her mouth hanging open, clutching the duvet to her bare chest. The duvet I bought at a ridiculously expensive department store because the thread count was supposed to guarantee a good night's sleep. I don't say a word, I don't scream or cry, I just keep the camera pointed at them, panning slowly from his slack-jawed face to hers, then back again. The silence in the room is deafening, more powerful than any accusation I could ever scream. My steady hand and the unblinking eye of the camera are my only weapons. I film for a full 30 seconds. It feels like an hour, an eternity stretched out in shame and silence. Every detail is captured. The frantic look in Derek's eyes, the way Tara's lip begins to tremble, the glittery pink phone lying on the nightstand like a piece of damning evidence at a crime scene. Finally, I lower my phone. My eyes scan the room and land on Tara's purse, a trendy leather bag tossed carelessly on the floor next to her discarded fitness instructor leggings. I walk over, my steps measured and calm. I pick up the purse, its weight surprisingly light, and walk to the side of the bed. I set it down at her feet without a word. My voice, when it finally comes out, is low and steady, devoid of any emotion. "Get out." Derek starts to speak, to try and spin some pathetic explanation. "Quinn, we can talk about this, it's not what it looks like." I cut him off, not even bothering to look at him. My eyes are fixed on her. "I know your husband, Tara," I say, my voice like ice. "His name is Miles Blake, the quiet architect. I'm sure he'll want to see this. You have 5 minutes to be out of my house." That's what breaks them. Not my sudden appearance, not the camera, but the simple, factual mention of her husband's name. The reality of consequences of a life outside this bedroom crashes down on them. They scramble out of bed, a clumsy, pathetic dance of grabbing clothes and avoiding eye contact. They don't look at me, they don't look at each other, they just want to escape. I turn and walk out of the room, leaving the door open. I go downstairs to wait. I don't want to watch their hasty, shameful exit. I've seen more than enough. I hear their frantic footsteps on the stairs, a muffled curse from Derek, the rustle of clothes being pulled on. I don't turn around as the front door opens and then clicks shut. The silence that returns to the house is absolute. I am alone in my house, my home. The first thing I do is go back upstairs to the scene of the crime. I walk into my bedroom and methodically strip the bed. I pull off the sheets, the pillowcases, the duvet cover, everything. I stuff it all into a black trash bag, cinching the top tightly as if I'm containing a biohazard. I carry the bag down to the garage and throw it in the bin. Back in the bedroom, I open the window wide, letting the cold morning air rush in, hoping it can erase the scent of them, the lingering ghosts of their sweat and cheap perfume. Next, I pull out my phone and call a 24-hour locksmith. I need an emergency lock change, please, I say, my voice perfectly level. As soon as possible. While I wait, I sit down at my kitchen table, the one where Derek and I ate breakfast together just 4 mornings ago. I open my laptop and transfer the video from my phone. I edit it with surgical precision, trimming it down to the most damning 15 seconds. The initial shock, their faces, my voice mentioning Miles's name. It's short, brutal, and undeniable. Then I draft an email. The recipients are Linda Harper, my mother-in-law, and Paul Harper, my father-in-law, the people who have always called Derek their perfect boy. The subject line is a single word, Derek. The body of the email is just as sparse. I attach the video file and write one sentence below it. Thought you should know what your perfect son was doing while I was on a work trip representing our family name. I hover my cursor over the send button. Just as I'm about to click it, I see the white van of the locksmith pull up to the curb. Perfect timing, I press send. The first shot has been fired. My phone rings exactly 2 hours later. The screen displays the name Linda Harper. I let it ring 3 times before answering, taking a slow, calming breath. Hello, Linda, I say. Her voice is strained, laced with a confusion that sounds performative. Quinn, we just got a strange email from you. What is this? Is this some kind of joke? I don't raise my voice. I keep it as level and factual as a news report. No, Linda, it's not a joke. That was my bedroom this morning. There's a pause on the other end of the line. I can hear the muffled sound of my father-in-law, Paul, muttering something in the background. Linda's tone shifts from feigned confusion to outright disbelief and then, predictably, to damage control. Well, there has to be an explanation. Derek wouldn't do something like this. Are you sure you know what you saw? I cut her off before she can build a full head of steam. He did, I state, my voice flat. The explanation is that he was sleeping with our neighbor in our bed. I flew home from my conference early and caught them. I don't offer her my pain or my anger. I offer her only the cold, hard facts. This is the first test of their loyalty, and I already know they're going to fail. For years, they've praised me for being a stabilizing force for Derek, for keeping their brilliant, sometimes flighty son grounded. Now, faced with indisputable video proof of his betrayal, their first instinct isn't to comfort me or condemn him. It's to defend him, to question my version of reality. Paul gets on the phone, his voice a low grumble. Quinn, maybe you should have spoken to us before sending something like this. This is a family matter. I'm not the one who needs to explain myself, Paul, I reply, my patience wearing thin. I decide to end the conversation before I say something I can't take back. I've changed the locks. He'll need to contact me through a lawyer from now on. I hang up before they can respond. The line goes quiet, and with it, any hope that his family would stand by me. They've made their choice. They will always choose him. It doesn't take long for the next phase of his strategy to begin. My phone starts buzzing with texts from people I considered mutual friends. They're all slight variations of the same concerned, carefully worded message. Hey, just talked to Derek. He's really worried about you. He said you had some kind of breakdown and are making some wild accusations. He's not defending his actions, he's attacking my credibility. He's already spinning a narrative where I'm the unstable one, the hysterical wife who has flown off the handle. He's trying to frame the video as something taken out of context, a product of my supposed paranoia. A call comes through from Sarah, a close friend I've known since college. Her voice is hesitant, full of a caution that wasn't there a week ago. Quinn, what's going on? She asks. Derek called me. He said you flew home unannounced and went crazy on him for no reason. He sounded terrified. The feeling of isolation, which had been a faint chill, begins to creep into my bones. He's not just lying to his parents, he's methodically turning my own support system against me. I realize that my silence, which felt so powerful and controlled in that bedroom, has created a vacuum, and he is rushing to fill that vacuum with his own poisonous narrative. My reputation, something I've always guarded, is now under siege. I tell Sarah a short, unvarnished version of the truth. I came home and found him in our bed with Tara Blake. I say it plainly without embellishment. She goes quiet for a long moment, and in that silence I can feel her uncertainty. I can tell she doesn't know who to believe, the dramatic story from a frantic Derek or the cold, hard statement from me. My options are narrowing. I can't fight this war on two fronts, trying to manage public opinion while also dealing with the legal and financial fallout. I have to focus on the things I can prove, on the facts that can't be twisted. I need to get my bearings, to ground myself in something solid and real. Facts, numbers, things that don't have an opinion. I turn back to my laptop and open our joint bank account online. I'm not looking for anything specific yet. I'm just trying to start the mental process of separating our finances, of untangling my life from his. I scroll through the last few months of transactions. It's a familiar landscape of our life together. Utility bills, grocery store charges, his studio expenses, my travel per diems being deposited. Normal, then I see it. It's a charge from 3 weeks ago while I was at a conference in Chicago. The vendor is listed as the Grand Savoy Hotel. The amount is $420. My blood runs cold. I wasn't with him. He told me he was having a quiet weekend at home working on a project. I search the hotel's name online. It's a chic, expensive boutique hotel downtown, the kind of place famous for romantic getaways and discreet encounters. This wasn't a one-time thing that happened this morning because he was lonely. This has been happening, this has been planned. My fingers fly across the keyboard, a new, frantic energy coursing through me. I change the date range on the bank statement, going back further month by month. I find another charge at the same hotel 2 months ago, and another one a month before that. This wasn't an impulse, it wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern, a routine. While I was working, he was playing. I open a blank spreadsheet on my computer. The feeling of numbness is gone, replaced by a cold, methodical focus. I create columns, date, vendor, amount, and notes. I become an auditor of my own marriage. I meticulously go through 8 months of statements for our joint checking account, our joint savings, and our shared credit card, the one we were supposed to use only for household expenses. The hotel charges are just the beginning of the story. The digital breadcrumbs lead me down a rabbit hole of deceit. There are dozens of charges at expensive wine bars, most of them clustered in the trendy neighborhood near Tara's fitness studio. There are online receipts from a high-end jewelry store for a delicate gold bracelet I never received. There are charges for dinners for 2 at restaurants he'd told me were impossible to get into. There are weekend trips to quaint little towns, paid for with our shared money while I was sitting in airport lounges and sleeping in beige hotel rooms. The stakes sharpen with every line item I add to the spreadsheet. This is no longer just about infidelity, it's about theft. He was using our money, my salary to build and furnish a secret life with another woman. He was taking the resources I helped create, the security I worked so hard to build, and pouring them into his affair. I print every statement, every receipt I can find. The stack of paper on my kitchen table grows higher and higher. It's a monument to his lies, a paper tombstone for our marriage. Each page is another nail in his coffin. The quiet, stable wife is gone. An auditor has taken her place, and she is going to account for every single penny. I move from the checking account to our joint savings. This was our future. The money we were carefully putting away for a bigger house, for travel when we retired, for a life of security we were supposed to build together. I scroll through the transfers and my breath catches in my throat. I see a series of large withdrawals, all of them transfers into his personal account. $5,000 here, $7,500 there, another $4,000. The memo line for each and everyone is the same. Studio project? Derek is a talented graphic designer, and for the last year he'd been talking about upgrading his equipment and buying expensive new software for what he called a big solo project. He claimed it would be the thing that would let him finally launch his own firm. I had supported it completely. I told him to invest in himself, in his talent. I was proud of his ambition, proud of the future he was supposedly building for us. I look at the dates of the transfers. My heart sinks as I cross-reference them with my spreadsheet of betrayal. A $5,000 transfer on a Monday, a hotel charge and a jewelry purchase that Friday. A $7,500 transfer in early spring, followed by a long weekend getaway to a coastal town I'd always wanted to visit. There was no studio project. The investment in his future was an investment in his affair. He hadn't just lied to me, he had weaponized my trust, my support, my belief in him, and used it against me. He didn't just cheat on me, he stole from us, he stole from me. The feeling is no longer numbness or shock or even simple sadness. It's a cold, clear rage that settles deep in my bones. I pull up a calculator and add up the transfers. The total comes to $27,400, a precise, staggering number that represents the exact monetary cost of his betrayal. As if on cue, my phone buzzes on the table. It's a text from Derek. "Quinn, please, we need to talk. My parents are freaking out. You're blowing this whole thing out of proportion." Blowing this out of proportion. The condescension, the complete and utter lack of remorse, it's breathtaking. He's not sorry for what he did. He's just angry that his comfortable life is being disrupted. Before seeing the transfers, a small, tired part of me might have considered a quiet, fast divorce just to be done with him, to escape the mess with as little fuss as possible. That part of me is dead now. He doesn't get an easy way out. He doesn't get to walk away clean. I burn the bridge of any possible peaceful resolution right then and there. I take a screenshot of the list of transfers from our savings account, the total of $27,400 clearly visible at the bottom. I text him back the single image, then I add one line of text. "Talk to my lawyer." I don't have a lawyer yet, but he doesn't need to know that. My phone immediately starts ringing. His name flashes on the screen. I decline the call. He calls again. I decline and block his number. I am committing to a new approach. This is no longer defense. This is offense. I will not be the victim in his story. I will be the one holding the receipts. The next morning, I search for the best divorce attorney in the city. I'm not looking for the cheapest or the kindest. I'm looking for the sharpest. I find a woman named Carla Monroe, a divorce attorney whose online reviews describe her as a shark in a power suit and unflappable. Perfect. I manage to get an appointment for that afternoon. I walk into her sleek, minimalist office overlooking the city, a large manila folder clutched in my hands. The folder feels heavy, weighted with the evidence of my ruined marriage. Carla is in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a tailored gray suit with an air of someone who has seen every kind of human drama and is impressed by none of it. I don't cry. I don't waste her time with a sob story about my broken heart. I sit down across from her large glass desk and lay out the facts with the same precision I used on my spreadsheet. I start with the pink phone, the flight home, and the video. Then I open the folder. I show her the spreadsheet, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the jewelry store charge. I point to the final page, the summary of the savings account transfers. "He stole this from our joint savings to fund an 8-month affair," I say, my voice steady. $27,400. Carla Monroe leans forward, picking up the printouts. She examines the evidence, her expression unreadable. Then she looks up at me. For the first time, the flicker of a smile touches her lips. "Well, Miss Harper," she says, leaning back in her expensive leather chair, "this is what we in the business call a gift. Your husband has already done most of the work for us." A clock has just started ticking on his comfortable life, and I can already hear it loud and clear. Carla asks me about our major assets. There's really only one of any significance, the house. "Whose name is on the deed?" she asks, her pen poised over a legal pad. "Mine," I say. "Well, both of ours now, technically. But I bought it before we were married." She raises a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Tell me more." I explain that 6 years ago, before I even met Derek, my grandmother passed away and left me a significant inheritance. I used $64,000 of it for the entire down payment on the house. Derek moved in with me and we got married a year later. I added his name to the title because it felt like the right thing to do, the symbolic thing to do. We were a partnership. I have the bank statements from my inheritance and the original mortgage documents to prove every word of it. Carla's small smile widens into a grin. Mr. Harper is in for a very rude awakening. She explains it to me in simple terms. The money I put down on the house because it was mine before the marriage is considered my separate property. He has no legal claim to it. While he might be entitled to a portion of the value the house gained during the marriage, my initial investment is untouchable. The legal ground beneath my feet, which I thought was shaky, is actually solid rock. The whole dynamic pivots in that moment. I wasn't just a woman who was wronged, I am a woman in a position of power. The house I thought I might have to sell, the home he defiled with his affair, is legally and fundamentally mine. I walk out of her office with a clear plan of action, the manila folder feeling much lighter in my hands. I'm not just getting a divorce, I'm reclaiming my assets, my home, and my life. I go home and sit in my now sterile bedroom. The new sheets on the bed are a crisp, impersonal white. They have no memories attached to them. I think about Tara Blake. I think about her husband, Miles Blake, the quiet architect. He's a decent guy. He and Derek would stand over the grill in our backyard during summer barbecues talking about sports and landscaping. He doesn't deserve to be the last one to know. A part of me, the part that was raised to be polite and avoid confrontation, hesitates. Sending that video to him will cause another family to implode. It will detonate a bomb in the middle of his life and the shrapnel will hit his kids. It feels like a point of no return, an act of deliberate destruction. Then I remember the sound of Tara's laughter in my bedroom. I remember Derek's hand tangled in her hair on my pillow. They made their choice together. Now I will make mine alone. This is the hard truth that flips my entire plan on its head. My revenge can't be contained to just Derek. To be effective, to truly achieve justice, it has to be complete. The entire illusion of their perfect lives must be shattered. I pull up Miles Blake's contact information, still saved in my phone from a neighborhood block party committee we were both on 2 years ago. I compose a new email. I attach the 15-second video file. The subject line is simple. From your neighbor Quinn. The body is just as brief. Miles, I am so sorry, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. My finger hovers over the send button for only a second. I press it. The action is immediate, irreversible. The email is gone, flying through the digital ether. I have now knowingly detonated a bomb in another person's life, and I have to be ready for the explosion. I sit back in my chair and accept the personal cost of this action. Some people, maybe even my friend Sarah, will call me vindictive. They'll say I should have stayed out of it, that I should have handled my own marriage privately. They'll whisper that I was cruel to expose Tara like that. I accept that from this moment forward I will be the villain in some people's stories, but privacy is what enabled this to happen. Secrecy is the soil where affairs grow and thrive. I am choosing sunlight. I am choosing consequences. Derek wanted to keep his clean image. Tara wanted to keep her perfect family. I am the one who is willing to burn it all down to get to the truth. My phone rings. It's an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A text follows moments later. This is Miles. Please call me. I know this next step will be painful for both of us, but it's necessary. I am no longer just a victim of this betrayal. I am a catalyst for the truth. I walk to the kitchen and pour myself a glass of water using a plain, clear glass from the back of the cupboard, not the blue mug he gave me. That mug and the soft, calm person it represented are gone for good. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the cursor blinking on a blank document like a heartbeat. It was quiet enough to hear the fridge hum and the faint tick of the wall clock. I wiped my palms on my jeans and took a breath that felt square and solid in my chest. It wasn't enough to just get out. I wanted the truth to change my life, not just my last name. My goal sharpened like a blade. I wasn't just divorcing Derek. I was dismantling the whole setup that let him do this. I was going to pull back every dollar he siphoned, protect my house, and make sure the version of him that got invited places matched the version of him who left hotel receipts in our bank account. I wouldn't be the quiet woman who took the high road and swallowed a story to make other people comfortable. I'd be loud enough, clear enough to keep the light on him. And I was going to give myself the future he kept telling me to wait for. I typed the name of a company into the search bar. The posting was still there, the one like the job he'd talked me out of last year when he said the timing wasn't right for us. The salary band made my fingers tingle. I could see the city skyline in the photos, a different horizon than the one outside my window. I opened my resume and started cutting. I stripped out the fluff he liked to brag about at parties and left only what mattered. The deals I negotiated, the partnerships I'd built, the revenue I brought in because I was good at what I do. I added numbers he'd told me were too aggressive, even though they were true. I tightened my bullet points until they felt like proof. In the quiet, I wrote a cover letter that sounded like me, not like a woman who needed permission. I reread the lines about travel and growth and the team I'd lead, and my spine straightened an inch. I saved the files to a folder named Next. I pictured packing boxes not because I had to flee a ruined life but because I got a better one. I could see a living room that didn't tiptoe to please someone else, a life that didn't shrink to make space for his ego. I hit submit. The confirmation page popped up with a neat, polite thank you. I stared at the screen, sipping plain water from a plain glass, feeling something I hadn't felt since the plane touched down, forward motion. The past had teeth, but so did I, and I wasn't done. The next morning, a moving truck idled in front of the Blake's house, the engine rumbling low. I watched from my upstairs window, the blinds barely open. Tara stepped out with a cardboard box hugged to her chest. Her hair was in a messy bun and her face was red and blotchy. She moved like somebody walking underwater. Two men loaded furniture without looking toward my side of the street. Neighbors pretended to pull weeds and wipe mailboxes, their eyes traveling and then snapping away, the way people look at a car accident nobody wants to be caught staring at. My phone buzzed with notifications from the neighborhood group text. What's going on at the Blakes? Did anyone know they were moving? Wow, so sudden. I typed nothing. The group didn't need my commentary. The scene outside said enough. A marriage leaving a house in a day's worth of trips. Derek showed up before lunch. I saw his car swerve to the curb and his door fly open like he couldn't get out fast enough. He marched up my walkway and started pounding on the door with the side of his fist. I stood behind it and watched him through the peephole, his face stretched and ugly in the curved glass. Quinn. Open the door, he shouted, voice breaking on my name. You've ruined her life. Do you even understand what you've done? He paused and shook his head like he was the one who had to be patient. We could have handled this. You didn't have to go nuclear. God, you love being a martyr, don't you? I said nothing. Silence pressed against the inside of my teeth until it warmed there. He pounded again, rattling the new deadbolt. A neighbor 2 houses down in a robe stood in her driveway with a mug and pretended to yawn. Derek's shoulders dropped. He lowered his voice like we were in some private fight. Just let me in, he tried. Let me explain. There was nothing to explain. There were only receipts and a video and a pink phone that had told me more truth than any speech he could give me now. He pounded one last time, muttered a word I'd never heard him use, and stepped back. He looked at the street like it had betrayed him too, then he pointed at the door like a threat. You're going to regret this, he said, clear enough for the wind to carry it to the curb. He got in his car and left fast. I stayed with my back to the door for a full minute after his car turned the corner, breathing in the smell of lemon cleaner still clinging to the wood. Through the window, I saw Tara come down her steps again with another box, a framed photo wedged on top. For a moment, she looked like she might glance up at my window, but she didn't. She kept her eyes on the sidewalk and walked to the truck. Later that afternoon, my phone rang and Sarah's name filled the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but holding my fear didn't ease it. I answered. Hey, she said, crisp, like she'd scolded herself to keep it together. "What's happening over there, Quinn? I heard about the Blakes and Derek called me again." He sounded, "I don't know." "Broken?" I went to the sink and turned the water on just enough to hear it. "I came home and found him in our bed with Tara," I said. "I sent the video to Miles. He deserved to know." She sucked in a breath. "You sent it to her husband?" The disgust in her voice was clean and sharp. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's reality," I said. "Because they were making decisions in my house that hurt me, and Miles is a person, not a prop." "That wasn't your place," she said. "You could have handled it between you and Derek. This is cruel. He told me you were spiraling, and honestly," she trailed off, then pushed the rest out. "Honestly, this sounds like it. You flew home, you ambushed him, and now this. Blowing up the neighborhood like you're lighting fireworks?" I pressed my knuckles to the counter so I wouldn't slam my fist into it. "He's been using our money to pay for hotels and gifts for 8 months, I said evenly. "He lied to my face 100 times. He's telling everyone I'm crazy because it's easier than telling the truth." "Well," she said, softening just enough to make me feel crazy for a second, "people cheat. You work a lot. Maybe you two can work this out if you stop doing all of this." I pictured the spreadsheet on my table, the neat rows of dates and charges. I pictured the trash bag of sheets, the cold air flooding my bedroom. I pictured her and me at 21, splitting fries at a diner, promising we'd always tell each other the truth. "I'm not doing this to be dramatic, Sarah," I said. "I'm doing it because he's turned my life into a lie, so I'll keep smiling for him." Her silence stretched out. I could hear ice clink in her glass on the other end. "I don't recognize you right now," she said finally, "and I don't like this version." Something in me folded and packed itself away for later. "Okay," I said. "Then don't call me Quinn." I hung up. The click felt like dropping a stone into a well. The kitchen looked the same, but the edges of everything felt sharper. I stared at the plant on the windowsill, leaves glossy and reaching toward light, and wondered when it had been watered last. My friend, or the person I thought was my friend, had chosen his story over my eyes. It wasn't a surprise. It still hurt. The email from Derek landed that night like a bad song stuck on repeat. The subject line was my name. The body was a flood, apologies that didn't land, blame tucked inside them, paragraphs where he called me cold, then needy, then dramatic. He used the words we and us like a net he could throw and pull me back with. I scrolled through the lines until I found the hook. "You think you're so perfect, Quinn. Should I start telling people why you really left your last job? Should I remind them about the write-up or how your boss said you were difficult? I know those details you didn't want anyone to know." I stared at that one paragraph until the words went out of focus. My last job wasn't a secret. I'd left because my boss belittled me in meetings and took credit for my work. I spent a year pretending it was fine until my stomach hurt every morning. There was no scandal, no write-up, just a slow drip of disrespect that I finally walked away from, but Derek had been there through it. He'd seen me cry in the car and smooth my face before walking into our house like nothing was wrong. He knew where the soft spots were. He was aiming for them with a smile. I closed my eyes and the chair pressed into my shoulders. If he started telling people I'd been fired or that I couldn't handle pressure, would it matter that it wasn't true? Gossip doesn't care about facts. It cares about the stickiness of a story. And a woman too emotional to handle a job sticks. I opened my eyes and read the paragraph again, slower. "You think you're so perfect." It wasn't about truth, it was about punishment. He was trying to make the world smaller around me. He was saying he'd reach into any chapter of my life he wanted and smear it up. I stood and walked to the back door. The night air was cool and smelled like cut grass and faint gasoline from the moving truck that had finally rumbled away. Somewhere, a dog barked twice and then stopped. I opened the door and stepped out onto the small concrete step, the one we used to sit on while we waited for the grill to heat up. The step felt rough under my bare feet, grounding. I went back in and forwarded the email to Carla with a single line, adding this to the file. I didn't have to ask her what to do. I'd hired her to stand between his tactics and my future. I shut my laptop and slid it away, the lid whispering against the table. I took a shower so hot my skin turned pink, then stood in the steam until my muscles unclenched. When I turned off the water, the quiet was deep. I wrapped a towel around my body and wiped a circle on the fogged mirror with my palm. My face looked tired, but it also looked like mine, not the version he wanted to control. Mine. In bed, the clean pillow under my cheek smelled faintly of detergent. I turned on my side and reached toward the nightstand by habit. My hand closed around nothing. The glitter of that other phone flashed in my mind and then faded. I put my hand flat on the mattress and felt its solid weight. He could paw through my past and call me names to anyone who'd listen. He could bang on my door and cry on phones and send emails like knives. He couldn't make me open the door. He couldn't make me rewrite what happened to keep his hands clean. I breathed in and let the air fall out slow. I wouldn't sleep well, but I'd sleep in a bed that was mine. The next morning, my phone rang while I was buttering toast I didn't want. An unknown number. I almost let it go. I answered anyway. "Quinn, it's Hannah." I leaned against the counter. "Hey?" Her voice was small, like she was calling from inside a closet. I heard what happened. Mom and Dad told me you sent them a video and I saw the moving truck at your neighbor's house. I braced for the same script I'd heard all week. "If you're going to tell me to calm down, I'm not," she cut in quick. "I just wanted to say I believe you and I'm so sorry." For a second I didn't understand the words. I turned off the stove because I couldn't stand the hiss. "Thank you," I said. My throat felt too tight for anything more. There was a long breath on her end, then she went on. "He's done things like this before. I don't know how much you want to hear, but I should have said something sooner." I slid onto a kitchen chair, the wood cold through my thin shorts. "Tell me." "I was 21. We had a family barbecue. You were out of town," she said, each piece like it hurt to pull out. "I saw Derek in the garden with one of his coworkers. He was holding her hand. They were close. Not like friends." The picture rose up in my mind with sickening ease, the grill smoking, laughter, his easy smile, a shadow of something ugly behind it. "Did you say anything?" I froze, she whispered. "He looked right at me, and you know that look he does, the one that says don't you dare." Her laugh was a small, broken thing. "I never told anyone. Mom and Dad have always cleaned up his messes. They just pretend not to see. I'm not proud of it." A bird chirped outside my window, high and thin. I let it fill the silence that pressed between us. "Thank you for telling me now," I said. "It matters." "If you need me to," she said, voice steadier, "I can write it down." "What I saw, I know that might help." My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "It would help." "I'm scared," she admitted. "They'll be furious." "I know," I said. "I'm scared too. But we'll do it anyway." We set a time to meet, somewhere he'd never casually walk into. When I hung up, the toast sat cold on the plate. I didn't eat it, but I felt a small spark, warm and real, in the middle of my chest. I picked a coffee shop across town, the kind with brick walls and a chalkboard menu where they draw little hearts next to the specials. When I walked in, the air smelled like cinnamon and ground beans. Hannah was already there, tucked in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. Her eyes were rimmed red like she hadn't slept. She stood when she saw me, then sat back down fast like she thought better of a hug. "Hi," she said, almost shy. "Hi." I slid into the seat across from her. The table had a nick in it shaped like a comma. I traced it with my finger while she found her words. "I keep thinking about that day," she said, staring at the steam rising from her mug. "You were in Houston, I think. Dad was bragging about Derek's latest client. Everyone was laughing. I went to get more lemonade, and when I came back out, he was by the lilac bushes with this woman from his office. He was holding her hand, whispering. He had that soft smile he uses when he wants something." The image felt like a bruise I pressed anyway. "Did they see you?" "He did," she said, and I saw the memory land on her face. He dropped her hand and just stared at me. It wasn't angry, it was a warning. I felt 14 again, like when I used to take the blame so he wouldn't get grounded. She wiped at her eye with her knuckle. "I told myself maybe it was nothing. I told myself you'd be mad at me for starting trouble." "I wouldn't have," I said, and it came out gentler than I expected. "I know that now," she swallowed. "There's more." When he was in high school, he got into a fight with a friend. He broke the kid's arm. It was bad. Mom and Dad met with the other family. They paid for everything and convinced them not to talk about it. They called it a boys will be boys thing. She winced. It's always been like that. If Derek did it, it wasn't that bad. If you got hurt, you're too sensitive. Behind her, a barista banged a portafilter against the metal knock box and the sound made her flinch. She took a breath and kept going. I'm not saying this to hurt you more. I think you're up against all of that, not just him. I figured as much, I said. The room felt too warm suddenly, like the air was heavy. I need you to write down what you saw that day in the garden, just the facts, if you're willing. She nodded fast, then paused. I'll do it. I want to do the right thing. She dug into her bag and pulled out a small notebook, the kind with flowers on the cover. I'll write it tonight. I'll sign it, however you need it. Thank you, I said. I meant it all the way through. She looked up at me then, and in her eyes I saw the little girl she'd once been, the one who learned to keep quiet to keep the peace. I'm sorry, she said again. I know, I told her. It's not your fault. We sat for a while without talking. The coffee shop soundtrack shifted to a soft guitar song. A couple at the next table argued in whispers about a dog bed. The world kept doing its small, normal things while mine rearranged itself. When we finally stood, she surprised me by reaching across the table and squeezing my hand. Her palm was damp and shaking. I squeezed back. On the drive home, the sky was that empty gray that looks like it could be rain or nothing at all. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there until the quiet in the car felt like a blanket tucked around my shoulders. Hannah's words didn't make the hurt go away, but they snapped all the pieces into place. I could see the whole picture now, not just the glittery slice of it that had been lying on my pillow. It wasn't about a single mistake. It wasn't about an affair that just happened. The affair with Tara wasn't an exception, it was the first one I could prove. My travel schedule wasn't just me doing my job, it was his open door. He'd planned around my absence like a thief studying the night guard's route, and his parents' first reactions weren't shock. They were muscle memory. This is what we do, smooth it over, blame someone else, move on with a fixed smile. He'd lived in a soft nest made of their excuses and my patience. He'd stretched out, arms behind his head, because nobody ever made him sit up and account for himself. He talked me out of promotions by calling it our timing. He called my calm a gift while using it as cover. The anger I felt now wasn't hot, it was dense and quiet, like a rock I could lift with both hands and place exactly where it needed to go. When I got inside, I put the kettle on for tea I wasn't sure I'd drink. I opened my laptop. An email from Carla sat at the top of my inbox, subject line neat and polite. I clicked. Her message was short. She'd received a letter from Derek's new lawyer. He was making an offer. I could keep the house if I signed a non-disclosure agreement and gave him half of my retirement savings. I sat back and stared at the words. He wanted me to buy my silence and pay him on top of it. He wanted to close the door on any talk of what he'd done to keep his image polished while I wrote a check and pretended we'd both just grown apart. My stomach twisted. It was a trap dressed like a gift. If I took it, there would be no deep look into where the money really went. No record of the bracelet, the hotels, the wine bars. He could go back to nodding at neighbors and framing me as the bitter ex-wife who couldn't move on. I picked up my phone and called Carla. She answered on the second ring. You read it? I did, I said. It's insulting. It is, she agreed. And telling. I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement, I said. And he's not getting a penny from my retirement. Good, she said. I could hear the smile in her voice. Then we reject it. They're trying to skip the part where we look into his accounts. He's scared of that. I want the part he's scared of, I said. My voice was calm. Tell them we'll see them wherever we need to see them. Consider it done, she said. I'll send the response today. After I hung up, the kettle started to whistle. I turned off the burner and let it sit, popping and clicking as the heat faded. The easy way out had just been taken off the table, and maybe that was for the best. I wasn't going to trade truth for quiet. I wasn't going to pay him to rewrite the story. I poured hot water over a tea bag and watched the brown bloom into the cup, slow and certain, the way night darkens a room even if you try to hold it back. Carla slid a glass of water across the table to me and clicked her pen. Her office smelled faintly like eucalyptus and new paper. "If we keep this quiet and quick, he wins," she said. "He'll keep the story neat." "I don't want neat," I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. "I want true," she nodded once like she'd been waiting to hear that. We went through it piece by piece, not in heavy legal words but in simple steps I could hold in my hands. We'd file the official start to the divorce and list exactly why. We'd ask for his full money trail, his personal accounts, that so-called studio account, the credit cards. We'd bring the video. We'd bring the spreadsheet that followed each dollar like a breadcrumb. We'd bring my bank records showing the down payment came from my grandmother's gift a year before I even met him. And we'd bring Hannah's statement, written in her neat, careful handwriting with her name signed at the bottom. The picture wouldn't rely on my pain, it would be built on plain facts. "He's going to throw mud at you," Carla said, not unkindly. "He'll try to make you look angry and unstable. He knows that can stick." I thought of the texts, the way my phone lit up with concern that wasn't really concern. I pictured Sarah's voice, tight and disappointed. "Let him," I said. "I'm not hiding to keep him clean." Carla pulled a thin stack of forms from a drawer and set them in front of me. "This gets us moving," she said. "Once this is in, the clock starts for him too." I read each page. The words were dry and unpretty, but they added up to something I could breathe in. I signed my name where she pointed, the pen gliding over smooth paper. My signature looked steady, even though my hand shook when I set the pen down. "What do you want at the end?" she asked, eyes on me, not the folder. "My home," I said, "my retirement, and I want back the $27,400 he took. He doesn't get to steal from me and walk away with a story about being a dreamer." She smiled with only half her mouth. "Ambitious, I like it." We stood and she walked me out. The hallway was bright with afternoon sun, the city below going about its usual business. People crossed streets with coffee cups. Cars honked. Life kept moving. In the elevator, I watched our reflections in the mirrored walls, Carla tall and precise, me smaller but planted. When the doors opened on the ground floor, I had the strange urge to look over my shoulder, as if the old version of me might still be standing in that office, quiet and agreeable. But she wasn't. I pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the heat, the start of a fight I had chosen. A week later, a courier rang my bell at 10 in the morning. He was young, cheeks pink from the cold, and he held out a thick, heavy envelope with my name typed on the label. "Signature, please," he said, tapping the line. The envelope was stiff, expensive, the kind that says this came from someone who wants to impress you. I signed, thanked him, and shut the door with the envelope tucked to my chest like a shield. At the kitchen table, I slid a finger under the flap and pulled out a stack of papers. The ink smelled like a copy machine and something bitter underneath. The first page had Derek's name and then a lot of words that tried to sound thoughtful. The second page said it plain enough for me to understand. He wanted half of the home's value. He was also arguing that the $27,400 he took was actually an investment in his business, and that he was due money for all the success he would have had if I hadn't derailed him. I let out a sound that wasn't a laugh, it was too sharp for that. He was taking the money he stole and dressing it up in a suit. He was painting himself as a hardworking man I had hobbled because I couldn't control my temper. The papers were good at pretending to be reasonable, that's what made them so awful. I texted Carla, "Envelope arrived, it's a grab for half the house and a sob story about his project." She called right away. "It's a scare tactic," she said. "They're trying to make you rush." "It's working," I admitted. "I feel like I can't breathe." "That's normal," she said, softer. "But remember what you have. Truth likes daylight, lies hate it. We'll answer this. Don't let the thickness of the paper trick you." After we hung up, I stacked the pages and still felt that paper weight pushing on my chest. I walked to the window and watched a squirrel hop along the fence, tail flicking like it had all the time in the world. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass and closed my eyes. His plan was so clear. He wanted to tie me up in this for as long as possible, make it so expensive and exhausting that I'd take any deal to make it stop. He wanted me small and tired. He wanted my home. I carried the envelope to the counter and set it next to the fruit bowl like it was just mail. But even while I made myself a sandwich I didn't eat, I could feel it sitting there, all that clean white paper humming with his story about himself. This attack found the softest spot in me like it had a map. I've always been the careful one, the saver, the person who reads every line on a contract and sets up folders for receipts. My grandmother used to touch my cheek and call me my safe harbor. She saved and pinched pennies her whole life so she could leave me enough to start mine steady. When I bought the house with her money, I stood in the empty living room and told the air thank you. It felt like a promise to her that I'd be smart and nobody would take advantage of me. Now the man I married was trying to twist that promise into something he could cash in. He wanted to pry up the floorboards of the only place that felt like mine. He wanted to turn my patience and my planning into proof that I should take care of him. Panic crawled up my throat. What if some man in a suit read his pretty words and nodded along? What if people who'd never met me said, "Well, she is being dramatic," and stamped a thing that knocked the walls of my life down? I pictured movers carrying my couch out past the azalea bush, the front door wide open, neighbors watching with their mouths tight. I pictured signing a check I didn't owe and calling it peace. The room tilted. I sat on the floor, my back against the lower kitchen cabinets, and pulled my knees to my chest. The tile was cold through my leggings. I cried in a way that made my ribs ache. Not the gentle movie kind of crying, but the red-faced, ugly kind that leaves you stuffy and raw. I cried for my grandmother's hands counting out bills at her kitchen table. I cried for the person I had been who believed being steady would protect me. I cried for the life I thought I built, only to find out it had cracks someone else knew about long before I did. When the sobs finally choked off, the house was very quiet. The clock ticked in the hall. A car drove past and the sound was there and then gone. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my sweatshirt and sat there breathing until my breath sounded normal again. I felt emptier, but emptiness has its uses. There's room inside it for a decision. I stood up slow, feeling the pull in my back from crying so hard. I walked down the hall to my small home office. Afternoon light lay across the desk in a lazy rectangle. The manila folder sat where I'd left it 2 weeks ago, edges squared, a little worn from being opened and closed. I pulled it toward me and flipped it open. First, the bank statement showing $64,000 moving from my grandmother's account to mine in black, standard font. The date stamped across the top, a full year before I knew Derek's name. I could see my grandmother's scrawl in my mind, the way she wrote grocery lists on the backs of envelopes. I laid my palm flat on the paper like I could touch her through it. Behind it, the first mortgage slip, only my name typed under borrower. It wasn't just a memory, it was proof on paper, simple and clean. I turned another tab. There was my spreadsheet, the one I had built line by line with dates and amounts and notes. Grand Savoy Hotel, wine bars, jewelry store, gas stations along the highway to small towns I'd never visited. It didn't look like a business plan, it looked like a string of dates someone tried to hide in plain sight. I could feel the fog in my head thinning with every page. The story those fancy papers told wasn't stronger than this. It was just louder for a minute. I went to my email and opened a new message to Carla. The cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to claim something. "Ignore their ask for the house," I typed. "I want a formal sit-down with a neutral third person. I want us both in the room with someone who will look at the facts. I'm ready." I read it twice, then hit send before courage could leak out of me again. I sat back and let my hands fall into my lap. Outside, a cloud moved off the sun and the room brightened a notch. I closed the folder, lined up its edges, and slid it back into the drawer where it would be safe but close. I wasn't going to let him turn my life into a story that made sense only to him. I wasn't going to sell my silence or my home to escape a little faster. In the kitchen, the envelope was still sitting by the fruit bowl. I picked it up and dropped it in the bottom drawer under the takeout menus and the rubber bands. Out of sight didn't mean out of mind, but it did mean it wasn't the centerpiece anymore. I made tea and carried the mug to the back step. The evening air smelled like damp earth. The sky blushed pink at the edges like it was embarrassed for us all. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic and let heat sink into my skin. The fight wasn't over. It might get worse before it got better, but I had something solid. I had the truth and a spine I could feel again. The conference room was too cold, the kind of chill that makes your shoulders rise without you noticing. The carpet was a low gray, the table a long slab of fake wood, and a pitcher of water sweated onto a stack of napkins. I wore a simple dark blue dress and sat with my hands folded on the table so I wouldn't ball them into fists in my lap. Carla sat to my right, glasses low on her nose, calm like always. Derek was already there when we walked in. He'd picked a suit with a thin pinstripe and a tie I'd never seen before, like he'd dressed up as a better man. He tried to meet my eyes the way he used to when a joke went over well at a party, a small, careful smile that said we were still on the same team. I looked past him like he was a painting on a wall. He lowered his gaze, then focused on straightening the stack of papers in front of him. The mediator took the seat at the head of the table. She was a retired judge with silver hair pulled back into a smooth bun, the type of woman who made quiet feel like a rule. "We're here to find a fair end," she said, voice even. "We'll take turns, we'll keep our voices calm, we'll look at facts." Her eyes moved from Derek's lawyer to Carla, then to me, and something in me unclenched a notch. Someone in the room liked facts. Derek's lawyer started. He had a slow delivery, the kind that makes nonsense sound thoughtful. He talked about the house like it was a team trophy and about Derek's vision like it was a living thing we'd all hurt by not clapping loud enough. He said phrases like potential earnings and artistic momentum and shared dream. He gave the $27,400 a brand new shine, called it seed money, made it sound noble. He never once said the words bracelet or hotel. I let him talk. I looked at the water beads on the pitcher, one fat drop gathering two smaller drops into itself and sliding down the glass. I watched the mediator's pen make slow, tidy notes. Carla's foot tapped once under the table against mine, like a signal. When the lawyer finally landed, he placed both hands on the table and nodded at the mediator like he'd told a bedtime story and expected applause. The mediator looked at Carla. "Response?" Carla didn't answer right away. She turned her head and I felt her nod more than I saw it. My briefcase was at my feet. I slid it up onto my lap and clicked it open. The sound was small, but in the quiet it felt like someone cutting a ribbon. I pulled out a thick folder and placed it in front of me. It was plain, no leather, no gold corners, just heavy with the life I'd put in it. I slid it across the table to the mediator. "This is our response," Carla said, mild as tea. The mediator opened the folder and lifted the first tab. Under it were still photos printed on matte paper taken from the video. Derek's face caught at that raw second between surprise and recognition. Tara's face, the duvet clenched white in her hands, my bedroom in the background, our headboard, the window that always stuck in winter. The mediator didn't hurry. She turned pages slowly, tapped the corner of one with the tip of her pen, set another down with care. Under the next tab was the spreadsheet I'd built. The date column a long, unbroken spine. The vendors like a parade, Grand Savoy Hotel, the wine bars, the restaurants with handwritten menus I never got to read. Amounts in neat rows, notes in my small, square handwriting. The mediator's eyebrows rose a fraction, enough to make a tiny line appear in her forehead. She didn't comment, just kept going. She turned to the next tab, credit card statements. The jewelry store charge stood out like a bruise. A small note card slip, folded and tucked in, with a photo printed from the store's site, a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny heart charm. I watched Derek swallow hard. He smoothed the edges of his papers the wrong way and made the corners bend. Tab 4 was my bank record, the one that showed the $64,000 moving from my grandmother's account into mine. The date at the top sat there like a little lighthouse. A year before I knew him. Behind it, the first mortgage paper with only my name where the space for borrower was. The mediator's pen paused. She glanced up at me, then back down. The last tab held Hannah's statement. Her handwriting was careful, rounder than mine, with the lines she'd written about the garden, the hand holding, the look Derek gave her that said, "Be quiet." At the bottom was her signature, full first name and last name, dated. I felt my throat tighten with a mix of pride and something like grief. She'd put her name on the truth, even though it would cost her. I didn't speak through any of it. I didn't need to. The folder did the talking. The papers lay flat and clean and didn't ask for anyone's feelings. The mediator sat with her hand resting on the last page for a long beat. She slid a finger under the edge of Hannah's statement like she was checking for a second copy. Then she closed the folder and set both hands on top of it. The room held its breath. "Mr. Harper," she said finally, looking at Derek, not his lawyer, "is there anything in this folder that is factually incorrect?" Derek glanced at his lawyer, who kept his eyes on the table like the grain in the fake wood had the answer. Derek cleared his throat. His tie was a little crooked now. It's taken out of context," he said, and even he seemed to hear how weak it sounded. His voice went thin at the end like a thread pulled too tight. I leaned forward for the first time. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "Was the studio project to buy Tara a bracelet, Derek?" I asked. "Or was that for the hotel rooms?" He flinched at her name like someone had snapped a rubber band against his skin. His jaw worked, but no words came. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder under the table. The mediator's face didn't change, but something in her eyes went flat. I knew that look. It was the look teachers get when they catch you copying from the kid next to you and you decide to argue anyway. "I think we'd all benefit from a short break," the mediator said. She suggested they step into a separate room. Carla and I stayed where we were. She poured me water. The ice clinked against the glass, a normal sound in a room that suddenly felt strange. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Derek's lawyer's tie was slightly loosened and Derek's face had settled into a dull gray. They sat down. The lawyer cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to withdraw his request regarding the house," he said. "He agrees to end this without a fight. He'll sign to give her the home and her retirement. He's not asking for any of her savings or assets." The mediator looked at me. "Do you accept those terms?" I looked at Carla. She nodded once. "Yes," I said. The mediator wrote something in her book with quick, neat movements. "Then those are the terms," she said. "We'll complete the paperwork accordingly." Derek wouldn't look at me. He stared at a smudge on the table like it was a tunnel he could crawl inside. For a moment I felt a ghost of the old life tug at me, the reflex to smooth it over, to say something kind so everyone could go home feeling okay. I let it pass through me and go. He had made choices. I had made mine. 3 months later, the house was quiet in a way that didn't make me brace. I stood on a stepladder in the living room with a paintbrush dripping a single blue tear onto the drop cloth. The wall was turning into a lake right in front of me, a bold cobalt that had scared him once. The windows were open, and a breeze carried in the smell of cut grass from somewhere down the block. My phone sat on the mantel with soft music playing low, no lyrics, just a guitar that sounded like a hand running over water. The empty spots showed. 2 friends who had chosen him hadn't texted in weeks. A few picture frames still leaned face down on the bottom shelf where I'd put them and never put them back. Holidays had a new shape. I spent Thanksgiving with Hannah. We made green beans and a sad little store pie and watched a movie with the volume too loud. She laughed once so hard she snorted, and then we were both laughing, not because the movie was amazing, but because the sound of something simple felt like a win. Linda called me a week after the sit-down. Her voice was raw and she cried in a way that didn't sound practiced. She said she was sorry for not seeing her son for who he was. I listened. I said thank you. I told her I accepted the apology because it would help me close the door. It didn't fix the past, but it loosened something tight in my chest I didn't know I was still holding. On a Tuesday afternoon, an email slid into my inbox from Maya Brooks. Subject line, offer of employment. I clicked it and read the words twice, then a third time, my smile growing at the corners until my face ached. It felt like stepping through a door I'd been pushing against for years. A new city, a bigger role. A team that wanted what I brought instead of asking me to shrink. I finished the last sweep of paint along the edge near the ceiling and climbed down, my legs a little shaky from standing on the ladder too long. I peeled the tape from the trim slowly, loving the clean line it left behind. The blue glowed even in the late afternoon light. It didn't apologize for being itself. I walked to the kitchen and opened the cupboard. My hand hovered over the mugs and landed on the cobalt blue one, the one he'd given me, with a little laugh and a comment about my calm. I turned it over in my hands. It was heavier than it looked, smooth where years of washing had worn it soft. For a second I pictured dropping it into the trash can and hearing the crack, but revenge had already had its meal and I was full. I set the mug on the counter and poured hot water in. Steam rose and warmed my face. The handle fit my fingers like it always had. I carried the mug back to the living room and stood in front of the blue wall. The color made the room feel like a different place, alive, sure of itself. I ran my palm lightly over the now dry paint and felt the faint grit of the roller lines. It reminded me I'd done this with my own hands. No one chose it for me, no one talked me out of it. The mug was just a mug, the color was just a color. He didn't own the calm he named in me, he never did. I took a sip and the heat settled low in my chest. The house had a new pulse. It beat in quiet, steady ways, in a clean bed that smelled like lavender, in a new lock that clicked shut with a solid sound, in a wall the exact shade of a sky right before it deepens to night. I breathed in, breathed out, and listened. For the first time in a long time, I heard only myself. If you've had to fight to take your life back, tell me in the comments. Your story matters here. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe and tap the little bell so you know when the next one drops.